Hello everyone and welcome back to another video. So, honestly, I'm a bit flabbergasted. When the first leaks came out, I thought that Apex would be a pretty decent Battle Royale, but, I was skeptical about the reported lack of Titans, and to be honest, I wasn't personally feeling a massive need to go and play another Battle Royale. Well, last night, I had some of the most enjoyable Battle Royale matches of the last year, probably. What is important, though, is it's down to the design of Apex, because this is one of the most, well-designed Battle Royales yet. Really, of that I have no doubt. Most BRs launch as an MVP, a minimum viable product. They feel rough around the edges, they feel messy. Well, this is a highly polished experience that has a level of design that I think trumps just about everything else's. In a world where Battle Royale is often a tacked-on game mode to something that already exists, this manages to feel far more like its own game with its own vision. Basically, it is one of the highest effort Battle Royale games that I have seen. For me, who was a bit tired of the format, Apex is, well, it was just reinvigorating. What is perhaps more interesting, though, is that my friend, who does not like BRs at all, loved it. All down to its uniquely stellar design. I mean, hell, this is a Battle Royale with respawning. It's got one of the best pinging systems that I've ever seen. It's a Battle Royale with classes that really nail class design in the best way, feeling more like Rainbow Six Siege in terms of their design direction. It has one of the most intricately designed maps that I've seen in a BR. It's packed full of small, delightful features that set it apart from the crowd in a genuinely novel way. Now, there will be a second video from this channel today talking about the broader story, that of Titanfall 3 and Apex, how they relate, the microtransaction system, all that stuff. But for now, we are looking at the actual game free from headlines. So what is Apex? Well, Apex is a Battle Royale set in the Titanfall universe. It feels a little bit more goofy and stylized, but once you're actually in-game, I think the core movement and shooting will feel quite familiar to people who have played the Titanfall series. Of course, bar wall running. Now, Apex is 60 players per match, but teams are 3 players instead of 4. Each player picks one of 8 characters, all with their own ultimate, ability, and passive. And that really is the core setup of the game. 20 teams of 3 people head down into the map, circle closes over time, the match ends when one team is left. But, well, the phrase, the devil is in the details, really applies here. Although I'd almost change it to, the delight is in the details, because when you look into the execution of this game, that's really where you see its quality. There's a lot to get into, and actually there's a lot for the rest of the industry to learn, so let's just get right into it. Okay, characters. The game launched with 8 characters, 6 of which are free, the remaining 2 being unlockables through currency or gameplay. Now, the first thing you're thinking is, heroes in a Battle Royale? What gives? Like, it sounds a bit odd, seems a bit derivative. Well, I mean, it might sound strange, but the execution is what makes it work. The characters have very diverse utility roles, and since you can only choose 3 of them, well, there are just many different team comps to go with. Each so far feels quite different indeed, with the choices and combinations really, for every match, just opening up some possibilities and closing others. Importantly, none of the ultimates feel like insta-win buttons like they sometimes can in Overwatch. They typically are a super strong utility. Now sure, some of them do damage, but they all can be played against and reacted to. They're not really insta-win buttons. Basically, they've implemented ults in a way that feels pretty damn fair. So each character has a passive, a utility, and an ult. Now, the character I played the most was Gibraltar. He has a 15-second shield on his Q that blocks ingoing and outgoing shots, and that can really help you get out of a sticky situation. But, I mean, he is a pretty simple character, I suppose. Then his ult is a high-density artillery strike that can be used offensively or defensively, because, of course, it creates a lot of smoke and mayhem, and that can be a great way to escape from your enemies. You can even call it down on your own position if you're overwhelmed, and then use your shield ability to survive through it. Now, he then also has a passive shield that appears when he shoots that offers a bit of protection, but it is kind of weak and is quite visible. Next, we've got Wraith. She can use a pseudo-invisibility walk to get around the place. She has a passive that lets you hear whispers whenever damage is near, and an ult that lets her set up 2 void portals, kind of like a warlock portal from WoW, that both of her allies and teammates can travel through. It's really cool. The opportunity for smart plays with it is, kind of wild. We then have Pathfinder next, so he can know when the next circle is going to be. He has a personal grapple and an ult that sets up a zip line for your team to use, which is really cool, and you can use that for some really, really quick escapes. Then ults like his and Wraith's I'd say are particularly satisfying in a team game like this. Then we've got Mirage, who can deploy decoys. He goes invisible and deploys a decoy automatically whenever he's downed, and then his ult is just a big multi-decoy. We then have Lifeline, who has a drone ability that will auto-heal teammates, a passive to boost your healing, and an ult that drops a care package full of loot. Then Caustic has gas mines. He can then also see through the clouds of gas created by his mines, and has a massive radius grenade, gas grenade ult. Then we've got Bangalore, who's got a smoke grenade ability, a passive that makes her run faster when under fire, and an ult that is a creeping barrage. And then finally we have Bloodhound, who's a tracker who can passively see the tracks left by enemies, including a timer for how old the tracks are, which is really cool, and then an ability that reveals nearby loot and threats, and an ult that increases his move speed and highlights enemies. So, as you can see, they're all very different characters. What I like is that they're all very similar when it comes down to like their health and their shooting, I would say. The characters, they're just not as overbearing as, say, the character system in Overwatch is, and you don't really have hard counters. So when you look through the lineup, what you see is that everyone is really strong, but you can only pick 3. Now, this actually makes team comps a really important consideration. Originally, I was really skeptical about how this would work in a Battle Royale format, but after playing it, I've got to say I love it. Each match of a Battle Royale normally feels different because of the game format, but then having varying team comps on top of that makes it feel even more different. The characters all have a lot of tactical depth and replayability, and I think a lot of long-term longevity will just exist in this game because of this system. Now, you pick one character at the start of the match, and you can't have dupes, and your team pick in a randomized order at the start of every match, with people being able to specify if, there's a character they would prefer to play. And really, it is a pretty darn slick system. So, your characters are locked in, they've been selected, and now it is time to jump. Once again, Apex handles this differently. There is a 10-second warm-up where people can mark their preference of where to go, but by default, one person is the jump master. So your whole team jumps with that person, and the descent is controlled by them. This means that teams tend to drop together, and that actually instantly leads to having cohesive groups of people facing off against each other in a chaotic but sort of tactical and controlled manner. I really like this system. Teams also leave smoke trails as they fall, and that makes it pretty easy to work out where other teams have been going. It's a pretty damn great system, actually. I think it delivers better gameplay and more closely connected teamwork by default, and it is also just quite handy, but of course, you can still solo drop if you wish, which I think protects the system from trolls. So, where do you drop? Well, this map has a number of novel features. First, a random area will be selected to have higher quality loot drops. This is clearly marked, and the idea is that it creates a new hot drop zone for each match, which, once again, makes the game even more replayable. And then even better, the various areas all feel really tightly designed, having really good quality layouts that create interesting gameplay scenarios. Past that, the map has a bunch of, I'd say, pretty notable areas that you will learn as you play, and kind of interestingly, whenever you enter a new area, you actually get a little pop-up, and it tells you what the rough loot quality of that area is. It's a very nice quality of life feature, but it's also nice that kind of once you learn it, you can really integrate that into your gameplay and your decision making. To give you an example of our own gameplay, well, we loved dropping around the bunker in the middle of the map, fighting for our side of it, and then running through the bunker, getting all the loot in sight, and then going into the jungle area. In doing that, we'd actually be going through multiple biomes, areas with very different layouts that all led to varied gameplay. Anyway, before I get ahead of myself, let's go back to you dropping. So, you and your team have landed. The next thing to do is get some gear, and you'll find that there are chests of loot, as well as just loot lying around on the floor. And like most Battle Royale games, you've got your health, you've got shields, you've got items to recharge both, you've got, armor, which will increase your shields, and then shield recharges. There are then a number of other useful items with probably more unique designs, like there's alt charge stims, things like that, as well as items that modify the characteristics of certain weapons. Now, weapons have 3 ammo types, so that's another thing that you want to balance along with your bag space. Plus, weapons, of course, have a bunch of attachment slots. Now, the UI and inventory management for this game are all really slick, and it's all further helped by the pinging system, which is actually one of the best I've ever seen. So whenever you ping an item, it calls that item out to the rest of your team. If they then ping your ping, it will indicate that they are calling dibs on that item, indicating that, of course, they want it. It's a super slick system that allows for coordinated teams to slickly handle the looting part of the game, and that makes it feel really fast-paced and absolutely not tedious. And this excellent pinging system then extends to the rest of the game. You can ping enemies to call them out, you can leave pings that indicate that an enemy was at a location, and you can suggest where to go. It's all very, very well done, and it just allows for effortless teamwork. So, you've got your basic loadout, you've dropped in, you know where the next circle is, so it's time to think about your gameplay, your game plan, and kind of what you're doing. And that really does sound like a typical Battle Royale experience, doesn't it? And in many ways, I mean, it is. But it's really the details that constantly set Apex apart. So let's talk about the map. Simply put, the map is awesome. You can really tell that this map was made by people who, when you trace them back, have a hell of a lineage in the FPS genre. Each area sub-area is masterfully designed. And what do I mean by that? Well, just the layout. Battle Royales often have these massive maps that don't really feel that well designed in terms of being a shooter. I would actually suspect that Apex has the highest design effort per square kilometer of a Battle Royale map. Everyone who I was talking to was singing the praises of this map. The best that I can do is just say that its various areas all felt very different in terms of gameplay, and I always felt like I was playing a high-quality shooter with an excellent map rather than something that was quickly rushed out. Now, I do love the more sim-like approach of, say, PUBG, but as a Battle Royale that's, I think, fantastically designed with a more arcadey shooting feel, honestly, Apex just feels kind of perfect. There's a lot more to it, though, because the map is littered with a lot of other things. There are zip lines. There's a lot of verticality. You actually have these big balloons with vertical zip lines up to them. You take the zip line up, and then you get to fly for a bit. And that's a mechanic that feels great. It allows for quickly hopping over to get some loot, and, some terrifying escapes from enemies as well as surprise attacks on enemies. Then there are roaming walker things that are full of loot, and that's another feature that keeps each round feeling different. Now, we proportionally did put a lot of our time into the jungle area around the middle because we were just trying to get used to the game's mechanics, but from my time going around the rest of the map, yeah, I can say that it is pretty damn tightly designed, it's pretty big, it's got a lot of variety, and overall I would say it is the best Battle Royale map of its type yet. So that's the map, but what about the core mechanics? Well, no wall running, no titans. That initially did seem kind of odd, but in playing the game, you can tell that it works. Movement feels great, as I think is expected considering the team. You can hold the spacebar to clamber up walls, which makes the verticality of many of the areas not really feel like a hindrance to you. Past that, you can hit the 3 key to holster your weapon and run faster, and if you crouch while running, you will slide. And if you do that downhill, you will cover a hell of a lot of distance very quickly. As for the gunplay, well, it's basically Titanfall, but with projectile weapons, of course, to make it work for the BR mode. The guns are, I'd say, a lot more interesting than in most games. You've got your shotgun pistols, triple beamed sniper rifles, LMGs that have a fire rate that increases the longer they shoot, double-barreled SMGs as well. They all feel quite varied to use, and I found myself constantly enjoying the process of creating my loadout. Then in terms of grenades, they're a little bit more interesting than most games. There's a regular explosive, an area denial thermite grenade, and then an arc grenade, which is also pretty different. You then have attachments of varying quality ratings, and even some attachments that modify how guns operate, such as allowing for select fire or tightening the bullet spread on weapons like the triple beam sniper, and that one really turns it into a beast. Never used it, but I've been on the receiving end of it, and it wasn't pleasant. Now, I'm actually kind of glad that Titans are not in. They actually were at one point, but in playtesting they found they didn't really work out, and I kind of can see that. And you know what? The same goes for the wall running. The devs talked about the pros and cons of wall running in Titanfall, and they kind of said that for a Battle Royale, having that level of movement could risk taking away from the map layout and the movement concerns that make the decision-making of a Battle Royale such a tense thing. I was initially skeptical of that, to be honest, but from playing as much of this game as I really could in the time that I had, I'm not really worried about that. There are more than enough mechanics here, and they're all really, really great. So let's just talk about the resultant combat of all of these systems. I would say that it is still quite frantic, a little bit chaotic, but it's reasonably controlled once you get a handle on it. It's pretty damn high octane when it's going down, especially if you get surprised, but it doesn't feel like it has moments of great unfairness. Everything feels quite learnable. You can't just be instantly ulted to death. In fact, the ults are typically more defense or utility focused, meaning that you can more use them to try to, say, stabilize your team. Now, time to kill is also not super low either, and that does mean that you really are able to play against your enemies rather than just being, randomly one-shotted or two-shotted. Now, the developers said that they chose a team size of 3 really much for this reason. They thought that the larger teams were cool, but that they resulted in large-scale combat that was a bit too chaotic to be readable considering everything else going on in the game, meaning that people wouldn't really learn from their fights. And after playing it, I can definitely say that I appreciate the smaller team size. It's a bit easier to manage, and I think that in having more control variables within the scope of a single engagement, it does allow for immediately more accessible and engaging tactical gameplay, but then because the game has multiple classes, that actually allows for a lot of variation across multiple gameplay engagements, which does manage to make each map feel really varied. Then the final piece of the puzzle is actually Death and Revival, because this is a BR that features respawning. So first, you can get items that'll increase your knockdown shield. What's your knockdown shield? Well, it's a shield that you can use to stay alive when you've been knocked down. But, that's fine. So if you've managed to stay alive when you're knocked, your team can, pick you up, as is normal for the genre. However, if you die, then your teammates can collect basically a dog tag off your corpse, and then they take it to a respawner, and that can get you back into the game. And this allows for pretty damn amazing comebacks, and I really love how it encourages your team to stick together and to sometimes, be aggressive to get back your dog tag. I mean, for example, having somebody die, but then putting down my Gibraltar shield to grab their tag before making a quick getaway, perhaps in an ideal scenario being combined with a zipline from Pathfinder, or maybe one of the portals. It's really cool. I think it's really an innovation for the genre, and I'm happy to say that it does not feel like a gimmick. It really does add to the game. So as far as our gameplay goes, well, the best result that we had was coming second, and we played it for a good few hours. Now, all I know is that when I'm finished at work today, I really want to go back and play this game. It's got a big, beautiful, varied, and intricate map. It has a range of interesting characters, and overall, I just feel like I still have so much to learn about the game. To me, Apex stands apart from the rest. It feels more polished than most Battle Royale games. It has a map that is cut above the rest. It is packed full of just really delightful additions, like its pinging system, its slope sliding, its map, its respawning mechanics. There's just so much to like here. Now, I'm going to do a full deep dive video on the business model and a lot of the meta story stuff about this, but one interesting thing that I see is the Siege inspirations. The character design is very much in that vein, and that is very exciting because in Siege, the same map that you've been playing for years can feel totally different with a new set of operators. Well, in Apex, they'll be able to do that as well. And I think that's a real benefit of their hero design. A combination of new maps and new heroes could keep this game feeling fresh for a long time to come if they're able to do it right. So there you go. I was initially a little bit skeptical / tentatively excited because I have liked what this team has made before. Now that I've played it, I think it doesn't compete with PUBG for me because PUBG is a separate category of game in that it's more slow-paced and sim-like, and I still do love PUBG. But as far as the other types of Battle Royale go, for me, this is absolutely the best, and you know what? It's actually the best by quite some margin. It's hard to overstate how much this game has impressed me. And of course, unlike, say, Call of Duty's Blackout or Battlefield's Firestorm, it's free to play. You can just go in and play it, and I'm still, going to do my deep dive in the business model, but the business model does seem to be pretty fair so far. Anyway, there you go. That is my thoughts on Apex. I absolutely recommend giving it a shot. I think it's great. Thank you very much for watching this video. Let me know what you think down below, and I'll see you next time.